Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into an impartial, structured breakdown of a recent late-night broadcast of The Gutfeld Show, which was guest-hosted by Tom Shalhoub. We're going to be looking at exactly how a really diverse panel of comedians and commentators tackled the week's biggest news. And we're talking about dissecting everything from high-stakes political strategy all the way to some honestly, truly bizarre local crime stories. Now, whether you regularly tune into late-night political commentary or you just kind of want to understand the cultural conversations happening right now, this explainer is going to unpack all the key arguments, the sharpest jokes, and the overarching themes of that broadcast. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. 1. The DNC election autopsy. 2. Political cringe comedy. 3. The Minnesota fraud case. 4. Permanent daylight saving time. And finally, number 5. Panelist viewer mail. Let's get started. Section 1. The DNC election autopsy. Deconstructing the 2024 loss. So the panel devoted a pretty significant chunk of time to analyzing the Democratic National Committee's 192-page post-election report, which was released following their loss in the 2024 election. The official document, well, it heavily blamed President Biden's allies for failing to adequately support Kamala Harris before she took over the ticket, and it cited a lack of focus group research. But the panel, and as they actually noted, CNN analysts as well, pointed out some pretty glaring omissions. They argued that a true autopsy should really include the main causes of the loss. You know, things like Biden's infamous debate performance, the fact that Harris secured the nomination without a traditional primary process, and the super complex voter responses to international issues like Gaza. Without those factors included, the panel felt the report was literally completely disconnected from reality. This quote really captures the panel's harsh critique. Guest host Tom Shalhoub joked that an autopsy is a medical procedure you do over a corpse, basically suggesting that the party just isn't willing to admit there is a body. And panelist Julie Banderas went even further. She compared the party's refusal to acknowledge its structural failures to AA for quitters. So the overarching sentiment on the panel was essentially that you can't fix a structural problem without categorically admitting your own failures to the American people. Right, so the crucial point here, as summarized by panelist Tyrus, is what he called the 3 F's of success party: failure, fraud, and no success. The consensus on the show wasn't just a critique of the report's methodology, it was a fundamental rejection of the entire premise, because as comedian Michael Loftus pointed out, the real autopsy was actually already delivered by the voters on Election Day. To the panel, this 192-page document wasn't an actual autopsy at all. It was just a PR strategy designed to protect future political ambitions. Section 2. Political cringe comedy. Hochul and Baldwin's satire. Now, shifting from campaign strategy to political theater, the panel took aim at a comedic sketch featuring New York Governor Kathy Hochul and actor Alec Baldwin spoofing Donald Trump. Now, to really understand the panel's reaction, we need to grab a little context. This sketch didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was produced for the New York Legislative Correspondents Association dinner. This is an annual kind of insider event in Albany where state politicians and the media gather to roast each other and perform skits. Think of it like a state-level version of the famous White House Correspondents' Dinner in D.C. The whole intention is lighthearted satire, but according to the panel, the execution fell completely flat. So let's look at exactly why the panel roasted this performance so harshly. First off, Governor Hochul's comedic timing was universally panned as painfully unfunny and cringy. And while they definitely acknowledged Alec Baldwin as a talented actor who does a solid Trump impression, they really questioned his motives for participating, suggesting it was driven way more by personal animosity rather than, good comedy. Furthermore, Loftus pointed out the huge disconnect of doing a goofy sketch about Trump when real New York State issues like recent flooding or the massive potholes at LaGuardia Airport are actually impacting citizens daily. Tyrus even zeroed in on the bizarre prop choices, specifically mocking Hochul for wearing a generic, completely made-up baseball shirt that literally just said champs instead of an actual New York team's logo. To them, it painted a picture of a politician just completely out of touch with her constituents. Section 3. The Minnesota fraud case. Fleeing in shower shoes. Okay, moving from Albany to the Midwest, the broadcast tackled a massive, totally bizarre daycare fraud ring busted in Minnesota. $3 million. That is the staggering amount allegedly stolen by just one of the fraudsters involved in this operation. And according to the broadcast, this money wasn't being quietly hidden away in some mattress, right? It was reportedly spent on luxury cars, jewelry, and dozens of homes, including international real estate. But what really caught the panel's attention wasn't even just the sheer scale of the theft, but the unbelievable incompetence of the criminals once the authorities closed in. You have to hear how the panel broke down the video footage of this truly ridiculous getaway attempt. So one suspect actually leaped off a balcony to escape, but his choice of getaway gear was profoundly flawed. He was wearing shower shoes. The result? Well, he was captured shortly after, caught on camera literally limping away, clutching one of the shower shoes in his hand so he wouldn't lose it. As the panel joked, running from the feds in shower shoes doesn't exactly scream criminal mastermind. This hilarious imagery led the panel to a very serious, central question. Were higher-up politicians actually involved in this fraud? Tyrus and the rest of the panel expressed deep skepticism that these bumbling, quote-unquote, bottom-feeder criminals could systematically siphon millions of dollars from government programs without inside help or at least deliberate bureaucratic blindness. They criticized the media, specifically calling out CNN's brief phone inquiries to the daycares, for really failing to investigate the potential of a massive political cover-up within the state. Section 4. Permanent Daylight Saving Time. Trump's Clock Proposal. For our fourth topic, the show shifted entirely away from crime and politics to a universal grievance we all share, the biannual changing of the clocks. I mean, it seems like nobody likes losing an hour of sleep or leaving work in pitch darkness. The panel anchored this discussion around a recent social media post from former President Donald Trump. He wrote, "I'm going to work very hard to see the Sunshine Protection Act signed into law. Stop worrying about the clock. Not to mention all of the work and money spent on this ridiculous twice-yearly production." Trump's argument really highlights both the logistical annoyance and the actual financial cost of physically changing clocks on towers and public buildings twice a year. So while everyone obviously agreed the current system is awful, the panel's alternative solutions were, well, completely chaotic. Tyrus advocated for a single universal time across the entire U.S. so travelers never get confused, or, jokingly, splitting the day into Democrat and Republican times so they literally wouldn't have to see each other. Michael Loftus demanded we just freeze the clocks on whatever time gives us more light, arguing the depressing winter darkness is just unbearable. Meanwhile, Machi pitched using military time, so he never accidentally schedules a date at 11 a.m. instead of 11 p.m. It perfectly illustrated how a simple, bipartisan issue can so quickly spiral into a hilarious, totally impractical debate. Section 5. Panelist Viewer Mail. Making out and ignoring advice. Finally, the show closed out with viewer mail, answering random, highly specific audience questions. And honestly, it's a great palate cleanser after all the heavy news. When asked about their first makeout song and the worst advice they ever ignored, the answers revealed a ton of personality. Tom Shalhoub made out to Elvis Costello and ignored advice telling him not to get married if he wanted to be an artist. Julie Banderas had a teenage cruise ship romance to Prince's Purple Rain and ignored advice about not day drinking as a stress mom. Tyrus hilariously recounted a $4 makeout session to Motley Crue and thankfully ignored his mother's advice that being a smartass and wanting to wrestle is no way to go through life. These anecdotes do such a fantastic job of humanizing the commentators, reminding us of the real people behind the sharp political opinions. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. From the intense debate over the DNC's post-election autopsy and those cringe-inducing attempts at political satire, all the way to massive fraud rings and debates over the very concept of time itself. It leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to consider. Does political comedy and punditry actually influence how we vote and see the world, or does it simply distract us from the real issues facing our communities? I'd love for you to think about that as you process everything we've covered today. Thank you so much for learning with us, and we'll see you on the next explainer.